Marcus's old pickup truck sputtered to a stop in front of the modest rental house he'd moved into just 2 weeks ago. The engine's dying cough echoed through the quiet suburban street, and he whispered a silent prayer that it would start again tomorrow. Through the rearview mirror, he watched his 7-year-old son Jamal clutch his backpack, eyes still red from crying during the custody hearing earlier that day. "Daddy, is Mommy ever coming back?" Jamal's small voice cracked. Marcus turned around, forcing strength into his smile even as his own heart shattered. "Hey, little man. Mommy loves you. She needs time to figure things out. But you've got me, always. You hear me?" As they climbed out of the truck, Marcus noticed the white picket fence next door, his neighbor's fence leaning dangerously, several boards broken and scattered across both yards. He'd seen the woman who lived there a few times, blonde, elegant, always in expensive clothes that seemed out of place in this working-class neighborhood. She'd given him polite nods but never stopped to talk. "Can we fix it, Dad?" Jamal asked, pointing at the fence. "Like you fixed my treehouse?" Marcus looked at his calloused hands, then at the tools in his truck bed. Money was tighter than it had ever been 2 jobs, barely covering rent and Jamal's needs, but his father had raised him better than to ignore a neighbor in need. Besides, fixing things was the only way he knew how to keep his mind from breaking. "Yeah, son, we can fix it." The next morning, Marcus was already measuring the damaged fence posts when he heard the back door open. He looked up to find her standing there, Rebecca. He'd learned from the mailbox, wearing a red sundress that seemed to capture the morning light. But it was her expression that stopped him, surprise mixed with something that looked almost like relief. "You're fixing my fence?" Her voice carried an unexpected warmth. "Yes, ma'am. Hope you don't mind. Noticed it was broken and I had some spare lumber in my truck. Seemed like the neighborly thing to do." Marcus stood, wiping his hands on his jeans, suddenly aware of how worn they were compared to everything around her property. Rebecca stepped closer, and he caught the faint scent of jasmine. "Most people in this town don't even make eye contact with me. You're out here at 7 in the morning, fixing my fence without asking? My daddy always said a man's character shows in what he does when nobody's watching. Though I guess you're watching now, so ... He offered a sheepish smile. She laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even her. "I'm Rebecca Wellington. Marcus James." He hesitated, then added, "And that's my son Jamal inside, probably glued to his tablet. We just moved in 2 weeks ago. Wellington?" Marcus's mind raced. He'd heard that name around town on buildings, on the community center, on half the businesses downtown. But before he could process it, Rebecca was smiling again. "Let me get you some water. It's going to be hot today." She disappeared inside, leaving Marcus staring after her, wondering what he'd just walked into. By the 3rd day, fixing the fence had become something more. Rebecca brought out lemonade each morning, and the conversation stretched longer. She'd sit on her porch steps while Marcus worked, and slowly, carefully, they began sharing pieces of themselves. "My ex-wife left 6 months ago," Marcus found himself saying, his hands still working the wood even as his voice grew thick. "Said she couldn't do it anymore, the struggling, the small house, a husband who worked 2 jobs and was never home. Took everything in the divorce except Jamal, and honestly, I think she only left him because he reminded her too much of the life she wanted to escape." He felt Rebecca's hand on his shoulder, gentle and steady. "I grew up with nothing," he continued, the words pouring out now. "My dad was a mechanic, worked himself to death trying to give us a better life. Died when I was 19. I promised myself I'd be different, that I'd build something stable for my family. But here I am, 32 years old, living paycheck to paycheck, and my son asks me why Mommy doesn't love us anymore." "Marcus." Rebecca's voice was soft but firm. "Look at me," he turned, surprised to see tears in her eyes. "You want to know what I see? I see a man who shows up every single day, who fixes a stranger's fence because it's the right thing to do, who holds his son together even when he's breaking inside. That's not failure. That's heroism." "Heroism doesn't pay the bills," he said bitterly. "No," she agreed. But it's worth more than you know. She paused, seeming to wrestle with something. Can I tell you a secret? This house, this estate, I inherited it. My husband built a real estate empire in this town, bought half the properties on Main Street, invested in everything. And then he died, leaving me with more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes and a town full of people who smiled in my face, while calling me the lonely rich widow behind my back. Marcus's hammer stilled in his hand. I've been in that house for 5 years, Marcus. 5 years. And you're the first person who's treated me like a human being instead of a bank account or a charity case. You fixed my fence expecting nothing. Do you know how rare that is? Asterisk, the fence was finished. Marcus stood back, admiring the clean lines, the sturdy posts, knowing this was likely the last time he'd have an excuse to be in Rebecca's yard. Jamal was playing near the garden, finally smiling again. Rebecca had that effect on both of them. Marcus, wait. Rebecca emerged from the house carrying an envelope. Please don't be offended. I want to pay you for your work. No, ma'am. It was just being neighborly, I know. But let me finish. She pressed the envelope into his hands, her fingers lingering on his. Inside is a check and a business proposal. My late husband's company needs someone to oversee property maintenance across all our buildings. Someone honest, hardworking, someone I can trust. The salary would be ... substantial, enough for Jamal's college fund, enough to stop working 2 jobs, enough to breathe. Marcus opened the envelope with shaking hands. The number made his vision blur. Why? He whispered. You barely know me. Because in 3 days you showed me more integrity than people I've known for years. Because my husband always said the measure of a person is what they do when no one's watching. And because... Her voice softened. Because maybe we both needed to remember that good people still exist. Jamal ran up, grabbing Marcus's hand. Dad, Miss Rebecca said I can use her pool anytime. Can we, please? Marcus looked at his son's hopeful face, then at Rebecca's gentle smile, then at the fence he'd built sturdy and strong, just like he'd promised himself he'd be. Yeah. Little man, he said, his voice breaking with emotion. I think we can... Rebecca squeezed his shoulder. The job starts Monday. But right now, I think someone wants to go swimming. And honestly, I could use the company. This big house gets lonely. As Jamal whooped with joy and ran toward the pool, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not just for a job or financial stability, but for something deeper. For connection. For proof that kindness still mattered in a world that had felt so cold. He extended his hand to Rebecca, then thought better of it and pulled her into a grateful hug. Thank you, he whispered. For seeing me. Thank you, she whispered back. For reminding me what matters. And as the afternoon sun painted gold across the newly repaired fence, 2 lonely souls found what they'd been missing. Someone who understood that true wealth has nothing to do with money, and everything to do with showing up when it counts.